In the year 1632, in the city of Amsterdam, a child was born into a family that had survived everything. His parents were Sephardic Jews, refugees who had fled Portugal to escape the Inquisition. They had left behind their language, their homes, and their names. But they had carried something no court could burn: their faith, their books, and their will to think. They named the boy Baruch, which means blessed. He grew up in the Portuguese Jewish community of Amsterdam, one of the freest Jewish communities in all of Europe. His father was a merchant. His mother died when he was 6. From childhood, Baruch read everything: the Torah, the Talmud, the medieval philosophers. He had a mind that could not stop asking questions. The Portuguese synagogue of Amsterdam was one of the grandest in the world. Every Sabbath, the community gathered beneath its vaulted ceilings, candlelight falling across hundreds of faces. This was the world Baruch Spinoza was born into. He belonged to it completely, and then, at the age of 23, it cast him out forever. On July 27, 1656, the elders of the Amsterdam Jewish community issued a document that would shake the world. It was called a cherem, a ban, an excommunication. But this was no ordinary ban. It was the harshest ever written. It spoke of abominable heresies and monstrous deeds. It cursed Spinoza waking and sleeping, going out and coming in. No one was permitted to speak to him, read his words, or come within 4 cubits of his shadow. Nobody recorded exactly why. Perhaps he had questioned whether Moses truly wrote the Torah. Perhaps he had said that God was not a person who rewarded and punished. Perhaps he had simply asked too many questions that had no safe answers. Spinoza never replied to the ban. He never begged for forgiveness. He never tried to return. He simply walked away and kept thinking. He was 23 years old. His father had died 2 years before. His community was gone. His name, Baruch, he replaced with a Latin word that meant the same thing: benedictus, blessed. He moved to a small rented room outside the city. He had his books, a few friends, and a question that would take him 30 years to answer: what does it mean to be truly free? To survive, Spinoza learned to grind lenses, the curved glass used in microscopes and telescopes, instruments that were opening new worlds in that age of discovery. It was slow, precise, meditative work. Hours bent over a grinding wheel, hands moving in careful circles, glass dust rising in the candlelight. His neighbors said he rarely left his room. His landlady said he was the most serene person she had ever known. Word of his ideas spread across Europe. The University of Heidelberg offered him a professorship. He declined. Louis XIV of France offered him a pension, asking only that Spinoza dedicate a book to him. He declined that too. He had no wish for fame or comfort. He wanted only what he already had: a room, a lamp, his books, and the freedom to follow his thoughts wherever they led. He smoked a pipe. He kept a simple table. He accepted only what he needed. When friends sent money, he sent it back. When admirers arrived at his door, he spoke with them patiently and asked them to leave when the day's work was done. He was not a hermit. He was not bitter. He was simply a man who had found something more important than comfort, more lasting than applause. For 20 years, Spinoza worked on his masterpiece. He called it simply Ethics, but it was not a book about right and wrong. It was a book about reality, about what the universe is, what God is, what a human being is. He wrote it in the form of geometry: definitions, axioms, theorems, proofs. as if truth could be assembled the way Euclid assembled triangles, with pure reason, step by step, until nothing was left to doubt. His central idea was stunning in its simplicity. God and nature are the same thing. Not a God who sits in judgment above the clouds. Not a God who intervenes in history, who chooses favorites, who can be pleased or angered. God is the infinite totality of everything that exists: the sea, the stone, the human mind, the stars. To understand any part of the universe is to understand God. There is nothing outside of it and nothing separate from it. And then came his most radical teaching. Human beings suffer, he wrote, not because fate is cruel, but because we do not understand. We are slaves to our emotions: rage, jealousy, fear, desire. Not because emotions are evil, but because we mistake them for forces outside ourselves. We say, "I am angry," as if anger is something that happens to us. Spinoza said, anger is something we do. And what we do, we can understand. And what we understand, we can be free from. He wrote, "Do not weep, do not rage, do not despise, understand." This was not coldness. It was the deepest form of compassion. To look at your own suffering without flinching. To ask, what is this? Where does it come from? What I not yet see? He believed that the person who truly understood their own nature, who saw clearly, without illusion, would become, in that very act of seeing, free. The glass dust had slowly filled his lungs. By the winter of 1677, Spinoza was 44 years old and dying. He knew it. His landlady knew it. On the morning of February 21st, she found him lying still. He had died quietly, alone as he had lived. On his workbench, a half-ground lens. On his desk, the manuscript of his ethics, still unpublished. His friends published the ethics within a year. Within a decade, it had been condemned by governments across Europe. Within a century, the greatest minds of the Enlightenment, Hume, Kant, Goethe, Hegel, were wrestling with his ideas. Einstein, 250 years later, was asked if he believed in God. He said, "I believe in Spinoza's God, the God who is not a person, but the order and beauty of all that exists." He died without wealth, without family, without the approval of any church or nation. He had been cursed by his own people, feared by governments, ignored in his lifetime. And yet what he left behind was something that no institution could give and no institution could take away: a way of seeing. Not optimism, not faith, but clarity. The slow, patient, unglamorous work of understanding the world as it actually is. Spinoza wrote, "The free man thinks of nothing less than death. He does not flee from it, does not fight it, does not curse the world for containing it. He simply lives fully, clearly, with eyes open. And in that openness, he is already free. Not free from suffering, not free from loss, but free from the blindness that makes suffering unbearable. That is the freedom he ground his life into glass dust to find. That is the freedom he left to us. Do not weep. Do not rage. Understand." Baruch Spinoza, Amsterdam, 1632 to 1677.